Chapter 24. Such are the times. It's been nearly 2 days now, and Saba has yet to awaken. The consequences of exerting his uppermost limits has proven to be both excruciating and exacting of him. He is a proud warrior. Whether that'll be his key resource or his tragic downfall is yet to be decided. Jai has been keeping me occupied and mentally conditioned by instructing me to meditate upon my prospective battle with Tiamatu. With a gradually surmounting effort, I've simulated our clash many times over and through various scenarios and lands alike. However, it has been rather burdensome and problematic having to approximate what manner of abilities and fighting techniques he would wield against me. What's more, I do not yet hold any steady concept of his appearance. Mentally sparring with a shadow figure may only do so much for me.
Shall we proceed with the final phase of your training? Come, let us culminate our time together and reap from it what is ripe.
Her arms crossed behind the lower of her back, Jai draws us near a broad clearing much like that which Saba conducted his trial about, only far larger. This glade is without the mounds of corollas and fallen branches that is common throughout the floor of the Koth. Glancing over at the hibernating Tamasu as we pass him, I notice that he is breathing normally again. He shall certainly be in health and primed to depart by morning.
Do not stutter, child. Are you prepared?
I nod and follow Jai deeper into the darkened and open expanse, alight only by the surrounding and draping forest and what few trees are sprayed across its muddy roof. My intent floods with a renewed determination for physical action, as I have worn my mental regimen thin and am in great need of a more material outlet. After approximately 2 km of walking, once at the center of the glade, Jai comes to a standstill and turns to face me.
This ought be far enough. Now, catch me.
What? That's it? I am muddled.
My instruction is simple. The task is not.
She smiles, then coaxes me to come at her with one hand whilst the other is still relaxed behind the small of her back. In a rather mocking fashion, she is sparingly making a statement with her placid stance. Either she's underestimating me, or she's attempting to fluster me by engaging in stoking my ego. I will demonstrate to her that I am thoroughly capable of seizing her whilst also maintaining the equanimity of an adept warrior. With a deep exhale, pulling and spilling out any dregs of ire within me and ridding myself of its fever, I come to be cool with composure. I mustn't forget that Jai has infiltrated my memories. Bearing this in mind, she is well aware of my speed when transformed. This indicates that she either possesses a confidence that she is even swifter and more agile than me, or that her reliance on her obedience commands to subdue me before I can lay a finger on her is grand and unfailing. Heeding this, it is not enough to simply be faster than her. I have to maintain a strategy of getting ahead and also adjust accordingly to how she may respond. My tactics need be both malleable and responsive. Command. Mimic Drakin. Stage 2. Immediately, I am overcome with the force of the artifacts. And additionally, to my surprise, the mental and spiritual conditioning I've done here has further developed the influx of that I may receive from them. In such a short span, I've grown almost unrecognizably stronger. I squeeze my clenched fist to gauge my unprecedented growth. Such virility! Jai stands her ground as I flap my scaled wings, conjuring a great screen of dust. Command. Cloak. I envelop myself. Between my invisibility, my inaudible movement, and the clouds of unsettled dirt surrounding us, Jai ought not be able to detect my advance. She will have to avoid a ghost. As I cautiously approach, she shows no sign of tension or anticipation. She hasn't uttered a word or engaged her obedience command. There must be some sort of prerequisite to invoking it. I tread closer and closer, stepping with the weight of a feather and without a sound. My heart bangs and rattles against my chest with an increasing violence by my every advance. Jai remains as cool as the frost of the Khan. This is it. I am at arm's reach, but she has yet to make a single move. Can this be it? The entirety of the situation feels like a trick question. Clear instruction, difficult task. That is what she implied. Yet, nothing about this seems difficult. So why am I so nervous? Seconds away from our contact, she speaks.
Command. Obey.
Jai hushedly utters her infamous command, then executes a spinning sweep kick, triumphantly toppling me with an unbelievable ease. The impact dissipates my cloak. With my back parallel to the ground, she leans in and whispers,
Shut your eyes. Be willfully blinded.
I attempt to fight the potency of her command, but try as I might, the resistance is futile. Her orders are unconditional. My eyelids clamp shut. The only explanation I can summon as to how she was able to detect me is that she employed the Koth's and sense of touch to locate me, just as I did with Gisbin. This is something that had occurred to me as a possibility, yet in the hind of my thought I had hoped that my cloak, intermingled with the dust screen, could prevail against the all-encompassing technique. This is a worthwhile learning. I may have lost the initial confrontation, but I have gained this knowledge in return. At the dawn of this discovery, I unintentionally smile for but a brief moment.
Oh, have you figured something out, or do you simply enjoy being dealt with as though you were unwelcome scum?
Getting cursed by an elder does not sit well with me. Nevertheless, I will admit that it is more embarrassing and flustering than it is aggravating. No, that's not it. I am just impressed, that is all. My lie is blatant. There's a catch to Jai's ability. I believe her obedience command and the orders that follow have two requirements evidenced by some constants in her formula. 1. They must be whispered or at the very least spoken lightly. And the second, she has to be near enough so that her victim can perceive her orders. Otherwise, she may as well be speaking to a rock. That is presumably why she waited for me to nearly touch her before engaging it. However, Jai did not whisper the activation of her command when Saba and I first met her, and thus this entails that she need only whisper the orders following the command, not the command itself. I assume she did so this time, simply to complicate my scouting and assessment of her abilities. She is as cunning as she is wise. Now that I understand the limits of her godlike command, I no longer fear it. I extend my wings backward against the cool ground and propel myself into the air. There is not much space to fly around down here, leastwise compared to the open sky. It is critical that I, too, use the Koth's to navigate, especially now that I cannot depend on my sight as my preeminent sense. I feel Jai's presence and can pinpoint her location vividly. There is no hiding from one another. I've distanced myself far enough as I am at the ridge of the vast clearing, but my acuteness of hearing is, in this circumstance, inauspiciously optimal. Thus, it is imperative that I somehow liberate that sense for now. Feeling around the dense bracken of the ceiling, I brush against what feels like a large shrub. The stench of it reminds me of a cream-hued bush which was leaking an azure sap from a few of its leaves when we first arrived in the Koth. I did not pay it much heed when I initially observed it, as I was overly stimulated at my first beholding of the astonishing forest. However, the gleaming moisture of its surface did, at that point, rouse my curiosity. Remembering this, I sample the texture of its syrupy liquid, rubbing it between my thumb and finger. This'll do. I rip off a couple of the leaves from the bush, then crumble and roll them into small spheres, plugging them into my ears. To ensure they stay in, I follow up by introducing the blue sap as a sort of sealing adhesive. Furthermore, I employ my mask command as a second layer around my acute auditory organs, impeding those which I'd never think to impede otherwise. Testing my ingenuity, I knock upon the bark of a nearby tree. Everything is now muffled. Well enough. There are likely two options, leastwise in the manner I see it. I can let off an astral arrow barrage in favor of generating explosive sounds to mask Jai's whispering as a further precaution. Then, I can use the commotion it causes to close in on her. In spite of this being the more favorable path of conflict, I am not Saba. Thus, I cannot knowingly and deliberately harm this forest in order to secure my victory. Especially in this instance, where my opponent is not the real enemy and solely a training partner. This stays me with option 2, an unmitigated frontal assault. I ought not to rely too heavily on my makeshift hearing plugs, nor can I have full confidence in my speed alone to win this. I must compel myself to outmaneuver and overcome her tactics in a way that's mentally jarring and unpredictable. However, this may be precisely why a direct head-on attack might indeed suffice. It is least what she would foresee and expect of me. In all likelihood, she may be anticipating that I progress with some sort of an articulate roundabout strategy. Were I her, this is, indubitably, what I'd wager in these circumstances. I have lost count of my attempts. Although I cannot yet see, I feel the waning of light as the forest has grown dim. The gravely enfeebled Sa is just barely supplementing her from up above. Tiamatu's vile essence must be seeping in more rapidly. We've wasted too many hours dashing about. Each time I neared Jai, she would order me to freeze whilst she jolted away. Then she'd simply release the command once a sufficient distance was placed between us. This pattern has been repeating for the better part of the day. Plugging my ears shortened her audible range by at least half of her area of effect. Yet even with a stunted distance, I still could not succeed. Now here I am, struggling to catch my breath whilst Jai is as composed as ever.
Tiamatu would have killed you 10 times over by now. One cannot wager or hope that you'll play with his food. You have yet to expose and take advantage of any of my flaws or weaknesses, child. I suppose you've come to the conclusion that I have none. Does such a warrior exist,
Though I cannot see her, I imagine that Jai tilts her head at me in this moment. Forget Tiamatu. If this were a real battle instead of the victimizing circus that it is, I'd surely have been slaughtered by now. I am confident that I am both faster and physically stronger than Jai, yet she controls my pace and my might. I cannot miss the point here. Jai's insinuating that no being is flawless, and that a weakness will surely present itself in all of my duels. However, the burden of noticing it falls solely upon me. It eludes me, it beckons me, it taunts me. After all of this time blundering my efforts, Jai surely has to have loosened her guard to some degree. Though overconfidence will not likely be the weakness I so desperately seek in her, I may be able to prompt it by showcasing an exhausted spirit. It is not preferable nor complimenting of my style of fighting, but if I can temporarily recruit it to distract her from the true ploy, then I just may be able to catch her. No, I will not. Such tactics are shameful. I shall conduct myself any other way, for deceit does little to flatter my character. Whether I conceive this out of goodness or pride matters none. I simply refuse to fight like a coward. Command! Astral arrow! Condensing my I mold the arrow to have a finer and more controlled explosive radius, as to not harm the Koth any further than need be. Jai leaps to the left, however, foreseeing this. I've launched a second shot in her predicted path. The old master quickly adjusts her trajectory with an eloquent pivot, leaning into a half-executed cartwheel, springing herself towards the white moss-layered roof. An opportunity presents itself now that she is suspended in air. Command, weightless. Hastily placing my right palm to the ground, I significantly reduce the mass of the very floor of this clearing. I have never manipulated the weight of anything larger than a tree before, yet in my Draken form, this is not as taxing as I had presumed it to be. Before Jai can fully descend back down, I loose 2 more arrows, one directly at her, which she dodges effortlessly in a subtle spin as she falls. The second trails behind me as I race it to her, just as I did with Kara and Kishnu. As I notice the slightest revision in the line of her lips, I halt my advance, twist to the side, then allow the arrow to pass right by me. Jai adjusts herself, preparing to jump back into the thicket, but this time her takeoff is stunted by the soft, buoyant foundation I created. Still, she manages to slip my arrow, bending backwards as it flies overhead. However, I seize the moment with an abrupt blitz and all of the urgency I can invoke. Soaring with the utmost haste, I meet my profoundly bewildered master and lightly tap her on the shoulder. At long last. I could not discern your weakness. Thus I bolstered my strengths. I smile and tell her as I re-solidify the ground. I had to adapt and deviate from the original strategy, which was to have a controlled explosion set off near enough so that I couldn't possibly hear her next decree when she had made it. However, the cusp of my improvisations were what won me this battle.
Well done. It only took you the day.
She releases her obedience command so that I may once more part the lids of my eyes. I cannot make out whether her compliment is genuine or sarcastic. Did you have Yindra undergo this particular training?
Yes. And if your next question is in regards to his completion time, it took him a few hours at most. Well, this is how I remember it. I'm growing old, you know.
She slips in that last part to comfort me. How is it that I am Parias' incarnate when wolves like him exist? Although I am victorious, learning that Yindra was leagues ahead at my age siphons the gratitude and air of triumph from my mood. His victory could not have been by way of speed and might alone. He was sure to have used his wit above all.
Parias was not chosen solely because he was the strongest. He was chosen because his will was the purest. Though he was quite literally the epitome of what a warrior ought be, the innermost part of him, shrouded in all of his calloused and virile tenacity, was gentle, forgiving, and loving, as it was written. Child, you express this nature well, but you mustn't dismiss that you and him belong to complexly differing eras. His, an era of ceaseless war. Yours, an era of intermittent peace in which disruption is fast approaching.
She sets a tone allowing her to be more agreeable. These are impertinent points. I do not expect Tiamatu to be graceful enough to loan us more time just because I'm not up to par with his previous opponent. Jai takes note of my nervous aggression.
You compare yourself to yourself and somehow come up short. You've made some dire miscalculations, En. Will you continue to second-guess and doubt who you are until the very end? Or will you agree that the time for adaptation, change, and transformation is now?
Her expression is that of a teacher who sees that her student stands before the doors of truth, but reluctantly has yet to reach for the handle. Undoubtedly, this odyssey will continue to change and mold me, for better or worse, as a victor or as a failure, alive or dead. These are the ambiguities which I must contend and wrestle with. Fortune may yet favor me, however. For as I am to be molded, I may respond to my molder, unlike the clay of a potter which must adhere always to his hands. Yes, I may accept or reject this crafter's gifts. Better I allow him to bless me. This much I feel coming from Parias. Jai leaves me to my pondering for the remainder of my time here, and though it is to be brief, it is to be of no trivial depth. We are to set off at the break of dawn, yet what little light shall be shed during Sa's incremental expulsion is to be determined, and thus my calling it dawn is a bitter thing. Such are the times, I suppose. Such are the times.